Welcome to the Working Tools Podcast, where today we will continue our discussion of Chapter 8 of Freemasons for Dummies, Myths and Misconceptions about Masons.
Ladies and gentlemen, brethren all, welcome to the Working Tools Podcast, a casual conversation around Freemasonry. First, it's important to note that our thoughts and opinions are our own and do not reflect those of our Grand Lodge or respective craft or concordant bodies. Please connect with us and ask questions via our website at theworkingtoolspodcast.com.
Today on the Working Tools Podcast, we have our four usual hosts. We have very worship brother David Colbeth from King Solomon Lodge number 60 in Auburn, Washington. Brother Craig Graham from Kalamalka Lodge number 160 in Vernon, British Columbia. Steve Chung from Prince Charles Lodge number 156. Is that correct?
53.
53. Sorry, in Kelowna, BC, and I'm Matt Appel, and I'm a member of Mill Creek Lodge number 243, and we meet in the lovely Montlake Terrace, Washington. So we left off last week with our teaser about the upcoming conversation about Albert Pike and Lucifer and Leo Taxel and Baphomet and
The Great Triad.
Clarity will ensue.
The Great Triad.
So yeah, I mean the Albert Pike thing, it seems to me, mainly boils down to a misinterpretation is quite the word, a misunderstanding of the use of the word Lucifer in one sentence of one book that he wrote. It's all kind of silly in my opinion, but now Lucifer, anyway, yeah. Does anyone else have thoughts on this other than me? I could
Well, go.
I mean, mostly it just seems, Lucifer meaning what, a bringer of light, and he was talking about the morning star and that sort of thing, and yeah, it brings light. There you go. But Lucifer over time has come to mean Satan, right, with was it John Milton's poem and that sort of thing. So
Paradise Lost.
Yes, there we go.
Yeah. I think our modern perceptions of the idea of Satan, actually, a lot of it sort of is influenced by Milton because he wrote those two long poems. In the same way that our visions of hell are all largely or very, very much influenced by Dante, the Inferno, in which he also used the ancient Greek model of the river Styx winding 9 times around the plane of hell, and that's giving us the 9 circles and what have you. So we have these theological visions very much curated by mortal men. I remember first time, I'm not sure if it's mentioned here or not, I didn't go too deep into it, but Baphomet or Baphomet or whatever you want to call him, the supposed Masonic Satan, which was also something that the Templars were accused of worshiping. I'd always heard was actually just a medieval bastardization of Muhammad. As that word started to filter back into Europe during the various crusades that went on, Muhammad just became Baphomet, and of course, as it goes through every person, the meaning and the definition changes just a little bit.
Yeah, I've heard that too. Yeah, and then I guess Baphomet became more of a thing, or I'm not. That's how I pronounce it in my head when I read it. I do not claim to be know exactly how to pronounce it, and I should learn how to pronounce the name of the demon that we worship. I mean, you'd think I would know this, but
Yes.
but the Leo Taxel, who we discussed on the program a couple of times before, but the Taxel hoax documents put a lot more, I don't know what the word is, oomph behind the use of Baphomet as a damning thing for the Masons. I will say I do have a Baphomet t-shirt. I didn't wear it today, but I thought about it. So
it doesn't say Motley Crue on it, does it?
It does not. No, it's actually it's drawn in the style of a early Mickey Mouse cartoon. So he's got the white gloves on and the eyes with the little divots in them and stuff. It's pretty good.
Okay. Somebody had a fun time drawing that.
Yeah. Yep.
Obviously not Disney certified apparel.
I was going to ask you guys because both of you guys are Scottish Rite Masons in the States, right? Matt and David.
Yeah.
Yes.
So Albert Pike holds a particular place in American Masonry, doesn't he? Like, I mean, highly influential. And I mean, largely Canadian Scottish Rite sort of follows the pattern of the Southern jurisdiction in the States, which is most of the states except a handful in the Northeast. And I know, and I think most Masonic, I mean, even most craft lodge jurisdictions have an Albert Pike Lodge somewhere on the register, if I'm not mistaken. So he's a very influential figure in American Masonry. Do you guys know much about him?
I know some about it. I mean, as far as Masonry goes, he essentially reorganized the southern jurisdiction of Scottish Rite and more or less rewrote all of the Scottish Rite degrees in the southern jurisdiction. And he wrote Morals and Dogma amongst several other books. And Morals and Dogma is sort of a degree by degree, very dense explanation of the Scottish Rite degrees. I have a copy, and then I have another copy that has an explanations in it, which is much more easy to read than the original version. But he's so yeah, he's sort of revered amongst Masons for Masonic reasons. I guess as an individual, he has somewhat more of a troubled history, depending on who you ask. Question mark, as having been a general on the Confederacy of the Civil War. But then there are those who say, well, yeah, anyway, there's two sides to that argument. We won't go into that here. But yes, so he's actually the only, or was, I think they moved it. He was the only Confederate general to have a statue in Washington, D.C.
Okay.
I think they have since removed it because it was vandalized so often.
Okay.
Yeah, does that answer your question? Or did you have...
Somewhat. I know that that he's long been a pillar of American Freemasonry, and I mean, I've come across him any number of places in my own readings. I just don't know a lot about him, and that you know he's and I know the stories that he was a Civil War, fought in the Civil War. He's done and he did a lot of work on his Masonic writings over the years. He's Morals and Dogma, Magnum Opus, the what is it? I've got a copy of it. The Porch in the Middle Chamber, which is kind of his take on the Scottish Rite craft degrees.
Mhm.
So actually written the first 3 degrees of Freemasonry, but written to be fully compatible with the Scottish Rite system. So he's he was taught himself several languages, and now I think a lot of people have gone over his stuff over the years and said, oh no, he was wrong here, he was wrong here, he was wrong here, but he just liked to bring as much into every one of his degrees as possible.
Yep. So
I can't say that I'm a student of the Scottish Rite. I am a Scottish Rite Mason, but I have not done the study that I would like to do, or maybe should do. I have, of course, I have my loyal Morals and Dogma books, and I don't have the annotated version yet. That's something I desire at some point, but I have not read all that. I have often thought it would be kind of fun to try to conduct in a special ceremony, not sanctioned or not actually to make a Mason, but to conduct the first 3 degrees in the Scottish work as just a ceremonial event. I thought that'd make kind of fun.
I agree. I think that would be cool.
Yeah, I think for me it would be fun to do it in a culmination where you could finish the 3rd degree at midnight, do a midnight 3rd degree of the Scottish Rite, the original Scottish Rite work.
May I ask why midnight in particular?
Oh, just because it's dark and spooky. No.
Because that's Lucifer's primary.
Right.
Would you like to do this on a day when it falls on Friday the 13th?
Yes, there we go. There's bring it all together. The full moon, the 13th.
Yeah. And we just all inadvertently end up ending the world that night. But hey, enjoyed the sandwiches. Yeah.
Yeah, don't mix the peanut butter and the jelly, or that'll be it.
Don't cross the streams. So,
but this was something that came up because it mentions another writer in here, Adolphus Levy, who had brought sort of the he was the one that provided the drawing that's on an old plate there. It's not quite the one that you just sent me. That's quite good there. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, the bearded head, horns of a goat, female breasts, cloven hooves, wings, upright pentagram on his forehead. Obviously, very something you wouldn't want to run into in a park in the middle of the night. That's for certain. Yeah, that's now I can't remember what Levy's things was, if he was an anti-Mason or just just somebody that generally liked writing about that sort of thing.
Was he the Protocols of the Elders of Zion, or was that somebody
Oh,
else?
no, the Elders of Zion was actually just the best research I came up with on the Protocols of the Elders of Zion. What it was, the Tsar of Russia, the secret police that put that together as a way of stoking anti-Semitism in Russia to further what were called the pogroms, to chase the Jewish people out of Russia or just exterminate them altogether. And then Henry Ford got a hold of those in the early part of the 20th century and started a whole new round of awareness about them. Henry Ford was an interesting guy. He was also a Freemason and sold virulently anti-Semitic newspapers at his dealerships in the early part of the 20th century. So, yeah, we've had some interesting dues-paying members of the fraternity over the years.
For sure, but we can't seem to take over the world.
No, we all, we all end up fighting over the coffee fund. That's usually where our designs on on world domination seem to stumble.
Yeah, and the coffee fund that gets 2 pennies every time somebody drinks a cup of coffee, but you can't get a cup of coffee at any restaurant for under $4 these days.
That's right. Yeah.
And they don't know why. They don't know why the building's falling apart.
You got a room full of brethren saying, "No, I put my money in the jar." So, yeah.
Yeah, a friend of mine.
Being junior warden of my lodge this year, I'm fully aware of that one.
Yeah, a friend of mine, when we talk, I was in the military with him, and one of the things he says when we're talking is, "Okay, David, who's going to be the next president?" Now this maybe a soft subject, but he always says, well, "Who's going to be the next president?" I know you guys meet and you talk about it and you figure it all out. I said, "Yeah, we can't even figure out what sandwiches we're going to make for lunch. How can we figure out what president we're going to make?"
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I don't know who's going to win the Super Bowl, and we don't control FanDuel, so we can't help you there either. Yeah.
Who holds back the electric car? Who made Steve Gutenberg a star?
I sometimes think that when we discuss things like that episode of The Simpsons should be required viewing for context. Because the one line with and who is the actor that provided the voice of the master of that lodge?
Patrick Stewart, wasn't it?
Stewart, that's right, Patrick Stewart. When he's talking about, we're taking over the world, and tonight we're having ribs. Yeah. And I've had so many people when I've mentioned that, when it's come up in conversation that I'm a Mason, is that like the stonecutters from The Simpsons? I've honestly had that question posed to me. So, so excuse me, as if somehow that is a better frame for what we do than what's actually the case. And I a couple of times I've just been, yeah, pretty much, just and let it sit there. Yeah.
We've all got birthmarks.
Which I think was actually the working tool of a Masonic degree, if I'm not mistaken. But oops, maybe the writers of that episode knew more than they'd intended.
All right, so there seems to be, and there's a couple pages on Lucifer and Pike and such, but I kind of feel like we've covered that. Does anyone feel that we need more discussion on that? We're headed for a short episode then, boys.
Well, it's okay. We still got to.
I think we got 2 more topics in here: taking over the world and breaking the law.
Yeah.
Well, there you go. Yep.
One peanut butter sandwich or rack ribs at a time.
There you go. One fish fry.
I
Well,
can't.
again, that goes back to that conversation I had in that bookstore that one day all those years ago about how we were globalistic, Luciferian, and the light we sought was satanic in nature. And oh, there was also some comment in there about us being involved in international drug smuggling too.
Ooh.
Nice.
Yeah. So that was a bit of a bit, well, I mean, I know we have a lot of aged members, and so there's a lot of prescriptions out there, but I don't see us actually having. I'm going to make those jokes while I'm still young enough to make those jokes. I'm 53. I'm on the cusp. So yeah. But that one, yeah, that one is, and unfortunately, any of the things that we've discussed, and I go back to that episode that happened 3 years ago in British Columbia, where that guy burned down 2 lodges and attempted to burn down a third in one day in the Lower Mainland. That is often one of the linchpins of people's paranoia and misunderstanding of Freemasonry is somehow that we're international and globalistically oriented.
Yeah, there's some crazy stuff out there. I will say my favorite, or one of my favorite definitions of Masonry is that it's a global conspiracy to improve the world one man at a time.
Yep.
But I probably shouldn't say that out loud because now I'm just feeding into the global conspiracy. Everyone hears global conspiracy and then doesn't care about the rest. So some YouTube transcript somewhere is now gonna flag me.
Well, we might get demonetized. Yeah.
Demonized?
I noticed at the very end here, the other one, the other old chestnut that comes up about breaking the law. That somehow if we show the appropriate sign, we don't get taken to the gallows.
Yeah, I've never been able to get away with it.
It's never worked for me.
I was driving home one time actually from a Masonic event with a former, or I guess he was still at the time, was still a King County Sheriff's deputy who was also a Mason in the car in the passenger seat while I was driving, and I got pulled over, and he didn't whip out his badge and get me off or anything.
See, and I've always been told that when you're driving around at 10:30 at night when you're on your way home from lodge and you're wearing a tuxedo, the cops are going to pull you over. They're really going to try and pull you over to see if you've been drinking. Because why else would you be out driving around at 10:30 at night wearing a tuxedo?
There you go.
Just
at a wedding.
Yeah, I think it was an ex-Mountie brother of ours up from Armstrong, Steve, that might have mentioned something to me about that.
Yeah, maybe.
Have I told you the joke about that? So there was a Masonic lodge, and it was often thought that there was much drinking and fanfare going on, and so the local police force decided to set up a roadblock, or to set up some observation. So about 10:30, 11 o'clock, out stumbles this brother to his car and gets in his car and kind of fumbles with his keys and gets in and starts to swerve out from the road, and then makes the corner around the building, and the police officer pulls him over. And what can I do for you, officer? And he does that whole piece, and he says, well, did you have a good evening tonight? He said, yeah, it was a grand night. It was a great grand night. And he said, what were you doing tonight? Oh, we had all the grand officers. We had all the grandies there tonight. And so he says, oh, really? Well, who was there? Well, the Grand Master was there, and the Grand Musician was there, and the Grand Bible Bearer was there, and this goes on and on and on. He finally says, well, what position were you? He said, he sobers up quick and says, I'm the Grand Decoy.
Yeah, that's good.
I know.
Yeah, I've heard of this story. Actually, I've heard mostly, from what I recall, I've heard stories about this from England, that this is one of the reasons why supposedly English authorities are requiring Masonic, whatever, judges and police officers and stuff to register themselves. But I've never heard of it working in the United States or being a big thing. I'm not saying it's never happened. I'm sure at some point somebody let somebody off of something, but you could go back to the Morgan affair, I'm sure. But yeah,
Yeah,
Well, I've even heard smaller versions of that comment where people will inadvertently blurt out, "Oh yeah, he's been working here for a long time. He's useless, but he's a Mason. So are all the people upstairs in the office. So they let him keep his job." And my first question I always ask is, "Well, how come you're still here?" But I've never quite gone down that road with anybody.
I think that's a different chapter.
Probably. Yeah. We'll get to it eventually.
Yeah, I don't think I've ever gotten any special treatment. My uncle, who kind of introduced me to Freemasonry, would say that at the airport and stuff, he would throw his wallet up on the counter and it'd have a Masonic symbol on it, and he would get upgraded to first class and that kind of stuff. And I never knew for sure if he was telling the truth or not, but I've never had those benefits necessarily. The only time I think I've ever had an official even recognized happened to be on Friday, just this last Friday. We were crossing the border into Canada. What's your purpose of coming into Canada, sir? Well, we're going to a conference. Well, what kind of conference? It's a conference on Freemasonry. And I was looking out the window of my car, and I had my hand on the steering wheel, and he kind of was looking in the car, and he said, "Oh, is that a Masonic ring?" And I've got a pretty big ring that I wear. And I said, "Yeah, as a matter of fact, it is." And he said, "Oh, that's really cool." And I said, then he gave us a few more questions and then moved on. But there was no special favor or have a great day or so mote it be or any secret words passed.
Winking or yeah. That's yeah, we still end up paying full price in most places, don't we?
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. Right.
Oh, Steve's talking, but he can't hear him.
My brother Bill Davis, he went to Vegas, and they were going to see the Blue Man Group, and they had tickets that were not the best tickets, but they were tickets for the show, and they ran into somebody outside the venue who happened to be kind of like one of the ushers at the show. And of course, Bill's wearing his hat and his jacket and everything else that shows he's a Mason. And this guy was a Mason. And so he identified Bill and started chit-chatting with him and asked him if they were going to go and see anything while they were there. And he told me I had tickets to the show and everything. And greetings were made and they parted ways and that was it, right? And well, geez, when they showed up to the show, they were treated like royalty. The lady said, "Are you Bill? I've been expecting you." And it was like the guy upgraded him to like a backstage pass kind of thing. And they had front row seats. And then after the show, they got taken backstage. They met the guys from the Blue Man Group and the whole 9 yards. It was like the coolest thing ever for Bill and his wife and his sisters to go to, right? And that ever happened to him, right? So, there are some pretty cool things that happen, that way.
Nice. I have to wear a hat more often, I guess.
Yeah, right.
You mean your podcast polo shirt doesn't get you?
My shirt and $3 will get me a cup of coffee at Denny's.
I was going to say $3.
I've worn the shirt and asked if we talk about carpentry.
Yes.
All right. So I think with that, we've about flogged chapter 8 to death. We are planning on having soon some more recordings about the York Rite. We're going to get an American York Rite perspective as opposed to the Canadian York Rite perspective that we got a couple weeks ago. And so we're hoping to get that lined up. And then we're going to, as we move into the appendant bodies, we're looking to get more frequent interviews with other luminaries of these appendant bodies. So I guess if you're listening to this fine podcast, stand by because that's what's probably happening next. I guess, does anyone have any final comments on the exciting world of Masonic myths and misconceptions? There you go. Don't do it. There you go. That's so with that, on behalf of Craig and Stephen and David and myself, thank you for all very much for listening to the Working Tools podcast. We look forward to hearing from you, and we'll talk to you soon. Goodbye.